I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And welcome back to Rob and Nate Record a Podcast.
It is week 4 of Public Domain Movie Month.
Is it week 4?
Yeah, week 4. The featured decade this week is the 1960s. As promised before, we got some bad science fiction. We got to get some Roger Corman into the picture, and we did so with the 1967/68 release, Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women.
Roger Corman?
Roger Corman was involved in this, even though his name does not appear in the credits.
Really?
Yes.
Huh. And here I thought this was all Peter Bogdanovich.
No, Peter Bogdanovich worked for Roger Corman at the time. And Roger Corman had rights to this movie. And as Roger Corman just wants to do, he likes to reuse stuff. And he said, well, let's repackage this, and I'll send Roger Corman down to the beach somewhere and shoot us about 10 minutes of women in scantily clad costumes on a beach. And we'll figure out a plot.
So, I'm kind of intrigued, because this is our second 1968 Peter Bogdanovich film.
Oh, you're right. 67, 68. So he would have filmed this shortly before he made Targets.
Yeah. But they were released the same year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found that kind of intriguing as I was kind of looking at some stuff for tonight. So, yeah. So,
what did you make of Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women?
Pretty much nothing.
Yeah, there's not a lot to make, is there?
I mean, our recycled learning more about how this movie was made, it kind of makes sense as to why, but our recycled footage and our new stuff never meet. But yet, that is, like, supposedly, like, the entire impetus of this film.
Yeah.
Like, this film is a whole lot of nothing packaged in a whole lot of nothing.
I'm going to go ahead and just read the review that I wrote when I watched this film for the first time back in last November, because it's not very long, because there's really not a lot to say. So, Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women, 1968, the 1962 Soviet sci-fi film Planetabur, or Planet of Storms, had been repackaged by Roger Corman once before, splicing in footage of Faith Demorge and Basil Rathbone, and released in 1965 as Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet. In 1968, Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women added to the original Russian film around 10 minutes of skimpily dressed women, including Mamie Van Doren, who's still alive, by the way, at the age of 91, all shot by young Peter Bogdanovich, who also provides voiceover narration. The film is pretty bad, with most of the entertainment value derived from the awkward dubbing.
Yeah.
This is a bad movie.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn bad. It's hard to imagine paying money to see this in a theater. People did. This movie made a profit.
Wow. I'm both surprised and unsurprised.
Yeah. Because they're just basically reused footage.
Yeah.
Other than Mamie Van Doren and
including,
the other...
like, still being able to see the Cyrillic lettering on the Russian spacecraft.
Yeah, when they dock at Station Texaco, Space Station Texas for refueling.
Also when the second one is landing on Venus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Explain the plot to Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women.
To the extent that there is a plot, a group of astronauts are landing on Venus and encounter... This is the IMDb plot summary. Astronauts landing on Venus encounter dangerous creatures and almost meet some sexy Venetian women who like to sunbathe in hip-hugging skin-tight pants and seashell brassiers.
Yeah, they're wearing bell-bottoms.
Yeah, it's... Yeah. This movie is not logical. It is not... Yeah. So you've got a group of astronauts who are going to Venus. They lose contact with them as they're trying to land, so a second ship is promptly sent to go and search for them.
In about 2 hours.
Yeah. And that second ship... Yeah, there's a lot of logical infalities in this, but it's fine. Like, the second ship goes to look for him, lands, eventually finds the astronauts, and they all go back to the spaceship. And as the Venetian women are attempting to kill them by worship of their gods, are able to escape Venus and fly home.
Yeah, you ever seen those explain a movie plot badly?
No.
It's like a
I think I've probably seen
like
one.
A Twitter thing. It's like, can you explain the plot of a movie and technically be explaining the plot of a movie, but in such a way that it hardly resembles the plot of a movie? So there's a lot of room for doing that with this film.
Oh, yeah.
So one would be, white man can't help but culturally contaminate when visiting the worlds. or a group of visiting men help some women deconstruct their faith. This is a faith deconstruction movie because they lose faith in their god Terra, the rubber pterodactyl creature.
No, Terra is the stone pterodactyl.
Well, there's both.
Yeah.
There's the fleshy form of Terra, but then there's the stone version of Terra. And in the end, they adopt as their new god the charred remnants of Robot John, who was left on the planet because they needed to piggyback ride on him through lava, the two first astronauts.
Because, in order to then be saved by a levitating car.
Yeah, the space car.
Yeah. Yeah, and they actually do call it the space car. Yeah.
There's just a lot of weird, awkward conversations because they have footage and they have to make things that kind of sound like...
there's just several parts where they don't even attempt to line it up.
It doesn't always... The dubbing is often awkward, but they're just like... They're creating conversations that vaguely go with what you see on screen.
Yeah.
There's the scene where they're talking about the picture of the three kids, that like the triplets with the 1, 2, 3, and they're just like, well, what are their names? It's too hard for me to remember.
The triplets, it's easier just to use numbers. You should really name them.
And they laugh at each other's bad jokes.
Yeah.
And the Peter Bogdanovich character becomes convinced that there are women, and he's in love with a woman on the planet that he hasn't seen, but he's convinced she's there and that he loves her. And they never really see them. Because they can't. Because these characters can't interact because some were filmed in Russia in 1961 and some were filmed in California in 1967.
Yeah.
And never the twain shall meet. Yeah. Probably a good excuse to go into the trivia section. Because there's really no point in talking about the cast other than Mamie Van Doren.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about her before we move into it?
They're all interchangeable Russians.
Well, but the number keeps changing throughout the movie.
The number of women does.
Yes.
Because we start out with
We start with 3, and then it goes to 5, and then to 7, and it's 7 through the majority of the movie, and then at the very end, it's 9. So.
Yeah. Well, isn't that the 2 women that come up out of the water? Like, who
that's
are these?
When they get
these
to
are
7.
Our sisters. I thought that was when they got to 9.
No, that's when they got to 7.
All right.
Yeah. As you mentioned, this is re-edited version. This is coming from the trivia section of IMDb. This is actually a re-edited version of a film previously released in the U.S. as Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet from 1965, which itself was an edited and dubbed version of the Soviet film Planeta Bur 1962. For this version, the already dubbed Russian footage was reused, but the American insert shots of Basil Rathbone and Faith Demerg were removed, and new insert shots featuring Mimi Van Doren and other actresses as inhabitants of Venus were inserted. Director Peter Bogdanovich did the narration as if he were one of the cosmonauts telling the story in flashback. Some additional special effects shots from another Soviet production, Battle Beyond the Sun from 1959, were also added. For this version, the famous shot of the Venetian reflected in the pool of water was removed.
I have seen part of Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet. It is very dry and slow and much more serious in its attitude than...
Have you seen either of the 2 original films that they're recycling footage from?
No.
The film takes place in the year 1998. At 6 minutes and 46 seconds, the spaceship has the Cyrillic Russian alphabet for Vega as it is pronounced on this audio track.
We also determined that you go 30... This movie is short. It's only 79 minutes long. And it is 33 minutes and 25 seconds into the film before you see your first prehistoric woman.
Yes. The prologue informs that the code name for this project is Marcia, which was the name of Faith Demerg, a character in the earlier Voyage to a Prehistoric Planet. This also justifies the use of dialogue from the first version as the astronauts attempt to contact Marcia. The headpiece, which Moana dons at 47 minutes and 39 seconds, is an exact match for the one scene in the reflection scene at the end of the earlier version of the movie. Mamie Van Doren told Femme Fatales magazine the wardrobe lady had a tough time finding seashells big enough to cover her boobs.
I believe it.
Yeah, that's really all that's even worth pulling out of the trivia on IMDb.
This film, the greatest thing it has going for it is its name.
Okay.
I mean, it's just a silly name. But it is, as we've said before, there's basically nothing to this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people wandering around. It's very disconnected because you're imposing a story onto film. It's not the same story as the original film. You can't have the prehistoric women interact with any of the main characters. I thought it was interesting how they just kind of let the prehistoric part go. Like, we see a dinosaur, and we see, like, little miniature Godzilla men.
We see a bunch of dinosaurs, and we kill off several miniature Godzillas.
Yeah. But that's all in, like, the first half hour of the film, and then you don't see them anymore.
Yep.
And, like, that were kind of interesting. And the fact that these are scientists and they're completely, like they're non-pulsed. It's like, this is, like, the greatest...
a lot of trash.
The greatest discovery ever. Our understanding of the universe has completely changed, and they're just kind of teasing each other about how the one has the crush on the woman he hasn't met.
Yeah.
It's an awkward film.
I asked you something as we were watching this. I'm too lazy to see if I can find an answer to this, my own question. But when they are worshiping the fire god on Venus, is that the inspiration for Beavis and Butthead's
Fire. Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I wonder, because I know that was airing in 1998.
Oh, yeah. Well done.
So, yeah. I mean, this is going to be a short episode, I presume, because there's really not a lot to discuss.
There's nothing else to say.
How would you rate this film?
I will say that I enjoyed it more on the second viewing.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
It's the same principle in which I enjoyed watching the Star Wars Holiday Special more when I watched it with you. Because I was forcing another human being to watch something bad.
Okay.
And that was kind of...
I actually liked this better than the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's shorter.
That's true.
This is bad. It's 1 star. I think I gave it 1.5 on the first time I watched it. But I'm going 1 star on the 4-star scale and 3 on the 10-star scale. It's not unwatchable. It's watchable because it's short.
Yes, I would agree with that. This has an aggregate score on IMDb of 2.9 stars with 1,711 ratings. I like this slightly more than you. I think I would give this a 0.5 star on the 4-star scale. But on the 10-star scale, I think I'd probably actually give this a 3.
On Rotten Tomatoes, it has no tomato meter score because it lacks
sufficient
critical reviews, but it has an audience score of 20%.
That's faring better than it does here.
Yeah. Bad movie, which means it's going to rank towards the bottom, if not at the bottom. Well, it's going to be the bottom of both of our lists.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident of that. How would you rank our movies? And we'll go through the titles for Public Domain Month. Was Human Bondage from 34, The Strange Love of Martha Ivers from 46, God's Little Acre from 58, and from 68, Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women.
Without looking at my reviews for the others, I'm still a little bit charmed by God's Little Acre. So I kind of want to put that number 1.
Oh, really?
Ivers I'd probably put as number 2. What was the first one again?
Human Bondage.
Human Bondage. No.
Of Human Bondage.
Of Human Bondage, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and put that 3rd, and then I'll put this 4th.
Interesting. I thought it would go a little differently than that. Mine goes in order of release. Number 1 is Of Human Bondage, followed by Strange Love of Martha Ivers, God's Little Acre, and Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric.
I can't explain why I'm so charmed by God's Little Acre, but I found that quite charming last week. So
we had kind of a reverse of last week because when we watched God's Little Acre, I had only had about 3.5 hours of sleep. And tonight, when we watched Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women, you only had about 3.5 hours of sleep.
Yeah. Very different reasons, but yes. Yeah. Well, if there's nothing else, I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And this is Rob and Nate Record a Podcast. Seems to be working now, but I need to... Something happened in the mic bag and the microphone levels were adjusted, so...
Is our level okay?
That's what I'm working on determining. Though I must admit, I now have an inkling desire, a very moderate desire to rename my computer to Robot John.
Robot John.
Yes.
Indeed.
My computer may now hereafter be known as Robot John.
Robot John.
We
Or
may
Marsha.
we might have to start issuing credits to Robot John.
Do you have final thoughts about public domain movies? Any observations about them? Any interest in seeking out movies based on their public domain status?
Yes. What I wish, though, is I wish I knew like how and why some more of these movies entered into the public domain. Why someone didn't maintain their copyright.
A lot of the time is people just did not file proper paperwork.
But why?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't. Yeah, I'm intrigued by that aspect of it. I wish I had the answers for all of those for the movies this month. I did look for it last week on God's Little Acre, but couldn't find it.
And copyright rules have changed over the years, and I think, and my understanding is that Disney kind of strong-armed an extension of copyright laws in the late 1990s so they could hold on to Mickey Mouse and some of the rest of their properties. But I believe books pop into the public domain after like 95 years, something like that. And movies, I don't have the clearest understanding of when they go into the public domain.
Yeah, I am going to check out that YouTube channel a little bit more. I've looked at some of the others that are on there, but have not had a lot of time for watching this summer, so have not gotten into that yet. But yeah.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is that 2 of these movies we watched on YouTube and 2 of these we watched on Prime. And it's so much nicer to watch on Prime because you don't have the constant commercial interruptions. Because that's
I didn't
the
mind
problem.
the commercial interruptions as much as I minded the sound imbalance between the commercials and the movies. So
Because some people, they're just a couple, but like every 9 minutes.
yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I was going to make a comment earlier to Melinda, and I forgot to. Goes back to our conversations earlier this evening. Sometimes I am intrigued as much or more by the course of our conversations than the subject of our conversations. Like tonight is one of those that to have charted the course of our conversations this evening would have been as intriguing or more intriguing than the substance of the conversations.
Yeah.
The meandering.
The meanderingness. And I actually have another thing that I was going to mention earlier. So they never saw them, right? They don't know what they look like.
Well, but the Venetians saw them.
The Venetians saw the humans.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, let's say they saw them, and they come back to Earth. If you make that public, the neo-Nazis are going to go wild. Because they're a bunch of blonde Aryan women on Venus. There would be all sorts of
That's going to be
neo-Nazi
the comment
Venetian...
that will actually get us canceled, not the fact that we did this movie.
The political implications of the prehistoric women...
Except
the
this
white
was made in Russia,
supremacist
not
unit.
in Germany.
Well, the prehistoric women are from California.
Yeah? You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.